Hello again, Steve here, with a few comments on to do with a few things. One was a YouTube comment by a guy in response to a video I did with Jeff Berwick on Entercast, and I made a point on that video. I believe that borders don't actually exist other than in our own minds, by using the analogy of when I was standing beside the Detroit River once and talking to somebody, if I can remember correctly, about the border. And the question was, where is the border? Well, the border is in the middle of the river. So the question I asked was, well then, can we go see the border? Well, no, actually you can't see it. So I said, well, how do you know it's there then? Well, because there was some agreement or whatever, and it's right in the middle. I said, well, if it's there, then surely we can go out there and, dig up a bucket of water and take it to some laboratory or whatever, and they'll test that it's, 5% or 3.5% or whatever border in that water. And no, of course not. Well, then it's not really there, is it? It's just people say it is. And one of the comments was on YouTube. The comment was, well, that is true. It's not actually there, but how does that work with your property line in at your house or whatever it is that are you just going to say it's not there? And well, that's kind of a dodge, because it's true. It's not there. It's not there at all. And in fact, what is there is a fence. Now, a fence is real. The Great Wall of China was real. The fence that Donald Trump is going to put up between Mexico and United States, which he claims Mexico is going to pay for, will be there. But still, I mean, there's still no border there. I mean, an earthworm crawling underneath the ground isn't going to run into some sort of a barrier underneath there. It's just stuff people put there, right? And so the lot has the boundary on it, and it has to do with the improvements, right? It's like if somebody, and that's why in old days there wasn't so much a concept, I understand, early frontiering and stuff. That's why they would stake claims and put up a fence. They'd say the old term, good fences make good neighbors. It's the fence that you own. That's real. But the border doesn't exist on the ground. So if, for example, there's a very busy city, like, say, Berlin, and they build a wall, that wall exists, yes. But if you go into some wilderness area, and you're trying to find a border, you can't find it. You'd have to take a GPS reading and say, okay, this is what the map says. So you're looking at the ground, and there's a leaf lying there, or a little tree falling over, or a bunny rabbit or something hopping along, and there is no border. There is no border. It's all just what people say. And if somebody builds a border like a wall, well, that's a wall. That's not an imaginary border, right? So, and this is what happens with city lots and so on. And of course, somebody commented on that post. Well, and there's a difference between a city lot in terms of one neighbor to the other, and a so-called country's border, which is that there's not violence involved in it, right? That was a negotiation of somebody to buy the improvements that are sitting on top of land from one owner to another, or somebody built those improvements. And those are what you really own. What you really own are the results of your labor, the results of your actions, right? Whether that's directly in building a house, or in working, putting your actions in to build something over here and collect some revenue, and then trade that for somebody else's effort who's built it. So it's a bit different. I get your point, but it's a little bit different. But it also in terms of these things not existing, but people actually fighting over them. In fact, at that place, the Detroit River, it's an interesting thing, because I heard it once said that what a border really is a place where two warlords, or two groups of warlords, decided to stop fighting and just face each other with their weapons. And if you go to any border, that's what you have. You have a group of armed people here, and a group of armed people here, and an agreement between the warlords to allow their slaves to visit each other's farms, and if they have the right paperwork. That's all. It's a checkpoint, right? In fact, that make-believe border that exists there, that supposedly exists there, is a checkpoint, because you have to go through. And I was threatened by armed goons there one time when I crossed, and there was actually a war fought over there called the War of 1812, where guys with guns came over this way, guys with guns come over that way, and fought back and forth over this imaginary line. But it's amazing how people can get worked up over this. And there's a guy called H.L. Mencken, and he was apparently a student of Nietzsche and others who were skeptics, basically, and skeptical of all these mythologies that are taught. And I ran across an interesting quote of his a couple of days ago, which I really thought was great. It goes like this: "The whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed, and hence clamorous to be led to safety, by menacing it with an endless series of hobgoblins, all of them imaginary." Of course, I don't know what other kind of hobgoblin there is except imaginary, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't take much of a listen to Barack Obama's latest State of the Union address to realize that, we're all fine. The deficit is down by 75%. But I don't think there's a lot of mention that he racked up more debt since every president, since the beginning of the formation of the United States. Not much mention of that. Not much mention of anything meaningful, because all of those hobgoblins he's talking about are imaginary. Has to be. Any successful president, any successful democratic or political ruler, I should say, who, as Barack Obama himself has admitted, is a monopolizer of violence. That's what Barack Obama said, and it's one of the only things I agree with him on. If that's the way you are, but you want to present yourself as some sort of a benevolent soul, even though what you really are is a monopolizer of violence, then you have to be a sophist. You have to be a very skilled, you have to be very skilled at making hobgoblins look real, or you have to have inherited a very, very dumbed down society. And not a lot of guys like H.L. Mencken, for sure. So, what is it we can learn about from this to help us to improve the quality of our lives? How about seeing hobgoblins and all kinds of other gobbledygook that comes out of politicians' mouths for what it is? Verbal diarrhea, lies, sophistry, and an attempt, well, more than an attempt when you get the monopoly on violence, but still, got to convince people that the violence is benevolent. An attempt, anyways, to continue you allowing them to farm you. So, we wake up to that. We can realize that, hey, we're not going to change things tomorrow, but change takes place one person at a time. And when we can change ourselves and our way of thinking, we begin to see things real. And we're more truthful to ourselves, and to others we can be as well. And to me, that goes a long ways to improving the quality of our lives. Maybe not in the short term. In fact, I'm often going to say definitely not in the short term, because we might not make a lot of friends, might lose some friends, and certainly get hammered with a fair bit of slander, especially if you post YouTube videos. You see some of the comments. But nevertheless, in the long term, I think we will get to say that, I said what I meant what I said, and I was as honest as I could be. And that, to me, results in quality of life, a deep contentment, no matter what people say. I lived my will, my conscience, to the best understanding of my read on it. That, to me, is quality of life. Steve here again, great chatting. Talk again soon in life.